All right, all right, all right, all right. We back, we back, we back. It's 2 o'clock. It's Monday, October, August 17th, 2020. This is for our people. We talking black books. We talking that black stuff. I'm your host, Smitty Bonton, Dre Smith. Andre L. Smith, Philadelphian, former law professor at Howard University, Widener, Penn State, Florida International. It's my job to bring the books the scholarly books that are being produced out there by fantastic, intelligent folks, and bring them to you, the people. We kind of focus on the nonfiction. Right. I enjoy stories. I enjoy fiction as well as anybody. But here we're trying to increase the knowledge and take stuff out of the ivory tower and bring it out to the streets. Because I know there's folks like you out there that want something deeper than what you're getting on social media. Right. So this is what we do each week. Again, I'm Andre Smith. I'm from Philadelphia. I rep for Hakim's Bookstore, 210 South 52nd Street. Between Walnut and Chancellor. Everybody should support their black bookstore. I'm very proud. I'm very happy that after this pandemic has started, after the George Floyd protests, that there has been a very serious uptick in business from black-owned businesses and black-owned bookstores specifically. So let's keep that up. You can reach them at HakimsBookstore.com, Hakim's Bookstore on Facebook, Hakim's Bookstore on YouTube, on Instagram. Right? And support your local black bookstore, whether you're in Los Angeles, Jacksonville, Boston, New York, wherever you are at. Right? As a matter of fact, let's support black HBCUs, black museums, all the centers of black intelligence, independent schools. Right? We're starting up the educational year, and there's a lot of controversy over whether we should be returning to public schools and whether they have the safeties and precautions. Well, let's also give a shout out to, number one, the private and the charter black schools, Afrocentric schools, Imhotep charter, all the myriad ones that are out there across the country. And then let's shout out to all the parents who, despite having your kids in the public school system or even parochial school system, know that it's on us to edify and amplify that education by bringing them by black history and other the Afrocentric side of knowledge to them, the things that they will not be taught within the classrooms by the majority. All right. So with that said, again, GoFundMe, support your local bookstore, support Hakim's Bookstore. You can go down to that link, GoFundMe.com, and hit up Hakim's Bookstore. I do not have an ownership interest. None of it goes to me. All to the wonderful Yvonne Blake, like Princess Y, Chris Arnold, shout out to you, my brother, Ms. Glenda, and all of that. They took over the bookstore from Dawood Hakim, who blessed it in 1959. So we're talking 60 years in the game, and they're going to do 60 years more if I can help it, if you can help it, and all that. All right. So what are we here today talking about? On August 17th, let us talk about. There's a fantastic book. The last book we're going to talk about, the culmination, is Free the Land. Ooh, let me show it. Free the Land, the Republic of New Africa, and the Pursuit of a Black Nation State. Right? That is a very, very, very interesting book that I'm going to have to get personally. But we're going to work our way all the way to it. Other great books that have come out this week include Reconsidering Reagan, Racism, Republicans, and the Road to Trump by Daniel S. Lux. Interesting title. I did not get a chance. Hold on, let me get the scroll off the bottom. I did not get a chance to check out the blurb or the description of this particular book. I have some thoughts on the Reagan. I am personally one that believes that when we talk about fighting white supremacy, I believe that we are somewhat misguided by putting the fight against neoliberalism out front. I understand the point of it. I understand my progressive scholars. I understand that Gary Becker's Economics of Discrimination proposed that a free market would eliminate racism. And the idea is to show those folks that that is inadequate, that the market will continue to reproduce racism if left untouched. I totally agree with that. However, I believe neoliberals don't care about us. It is neoconservatives who actually actively, intentionally construct the market in such a way that it creates black subordination. In other words, voter suppression is not neoliberal, it's neoconservative. It is not the market working by itself. It is people constricting the market towards our subordination. And so when we talk about racist policing, when we talk about taxes, death, and trouble, the school to prison pipeline, the imposition of the lowering of taxes on the wealthy, the imposition of taxes on the poor, whether it be soda taxes, sin taxes, cigarette taxes, or informal taxes like law enforcement and whatnot. Yes, they co-opt neoliberals. However, it is a neoconservative project, and that neoconservative project has been in effect since the Reagan era. So I am not one who wants to reconsider Reagan. I am one who wants to amplify the movement, the retrenchment on civil rights that began with the Reagan era. I feel it's unfortunate that Trump, as a puppet and such an easy target, and of course an outward racist or whatever, causes us to perhaps soften when it comes to George Bush Jr., Ronald Reagan. They were just as bad as we said, just because now that we've gotten to someone worse, an outward neoconservative. It is usually the neoconservative project to operate through subterfuge, right? To not state what the goal is, to pretend to be neoliberal, but knowing full well that these structures are going to exacerbate the marketplace. It is, in fact, rare. I'm not going to deny that having a president that openly disparages black folks, women, etc., and seeks to perpetuate a racial caste system is an anomaly. So it may look like most racist circumstances emanate from neoliberals. However, the reason Donald Trump is not getting money from neoliberals. He's getting money from neoconservatives. He is out raising folks to continue his this idea of a white ethno-state. So as a matter of fact, let's jump from there to a book that came out a couple months ago. It didn't come out this week, but we need to speak on it. Matter of fact, I don't even think I created a banner for this, so let me create one right now. It is called Hatemonger. This is a new book come out. Well, a fairly new book came out. It was in May sometime. It is called Hatemonger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, I'm typing as I'm speaking, and the White Nationalist Agenda. I am one who believes that Stephen Miller has been the president since 2016, right? I believe Donald Trump is a puppet. I believe there's others, right? He may not. Stephen Miller may not be. Okay, Stephen Miller may not be the only puppeteer, but he grew up, was raised up, mentored by Jeff Sessions, and placed in a position to implement the neoconservative agenda as far as immigration, we're sure. And that's what I think this book talks about. However, there is an architect to Donald Trump's racial subordination as far as sending federal troops and all that, disparaging black women, etc. So Stephen Miller, to me, is the person that we need to direct our anger towards, and not our anger, our strategy. Right, our strategy towards. So so on one hand, we're talking about one book came out, Reconsidering Reagan, Racism, Republicans, and the Road to Trump. But if we're going to consider the Trump era, I big time encourage you to check out this book, Hatemonger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the White Nationalist Agenda. I also hope that book makes even more clearer how the federal administrative state works, that the president is in control of the Department of Education, the Department of the Treasury, the Department of Justice. There's so many departments, boards, offices, Internal Revenue Service. The Army is a bureaucracy. And so the president delegates authority to many others. Donald Trump does not know any of the judges he's appointed. That came through the Federalist Society, right? So if we're going to understand Donald Trump, if we're understanding the world we're living in, if we're understanding the neoconservative movement, if we understand how this administration is promoting racism and wants to exacerbate the racial wealth gap in the future, we have to look beyond the figurehead that is the president. Regardless, there are presidents that wield real power and are very much involved, but we really need to understand more fully, more precisely about how the government, the full administrative state, works. And Hatemonger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, The White Nationalist Agenda, I believe is a book that can help bring that forward. All right. Some of these other books are not as exciting, but they're still scholarly. They're still worth our time, especially this one, as a matter of fact. Many of you already know about medical apartheid. So my next thing, on one hand, we're going to bring guests in here. And then secondly, I want to bring images in here so I can show you the books that we're talking about, because I know you've seen that big red book in the black bookstore by Harriet Washington called Medical Apartheid, right? Talking about the disparate and racialized healthcare going all the way back until the antebellum period and whatnot. Talking about gynecology and all the way up. Well, that was published in 2007. 2019, Professor Dr. Washington has a new book out, A Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind. Woo! That sounds like fire. And it sounds like fire to me. Again, I'm not going to bore you to death with my legal stuff and my law and economics, but I argue that racism in an economic way is best conceived of as racially asymmetric market failures and imperfections. There are 4 types: racially asymmetric profit maximization, racially asymmetric market competition, racially asymmetric information, racially asymmetric transaction costs. Harriet Washington is a master at the latter, right? Racialized medicine or medical apartheid is a reflection of racially asymmetric transaction costs. There are costs on top of the cash part of the transaction. Sometimes it actually costs us more cash because we're black, but the penalties, the lesser care, the brutality, the violence, all of these extra add-ons to the things we do, we can describe them as transaction costs. And so Harriet Washington, her first book, talked about transaction costs in the terms of medicine. And here we're talking about transaction costs in the terms of environmental racism or pollution, right? That black neighborhoods, whether it be air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, right, suffer more than any other, even similarly situated white neighborhoods, right? So you can take black folks of the same income and you'll find that the one in the black neighborhood is worse. Now, is that true for blacks and whites of the same wealth? Because we need to be careful when we talk about similar situations. That being said, it has been proven, I want to say, I had a paper from the University of Washington that I used in my book, 2017 book, Taxes, Death, and Trouble. And it even said in wealthy black neighborhoods are polluted far more than wealthy white neighborhoods. So this is an excellent book that can bring out how structural racism occurs in all types of places, all types of genres, how it exacerbates the racial wealth gap, and more importantly, I hope it points to the actors that have agency and responsibility for doing these things, because on the one hand, we can just blame the racial wealth gap, that there's a concept called not in my backyard, NIMBY, and that if you have the least political capital, you're going to get the worst treatment regardless of intent. However, I don't think that negates the fact that we have people that will seek out between white and black, similarly situated, that they will place it on black folks instead of white folks or poor white neighborhoods, right? And that is explained by neoconservatism, not neoliberalism. Neoconservatism sets, even amongst the vulgar, right, Neoconservative is not kind to poor white people. However, it intentionally sets the vulgar of the country, and that would be poor whites, against others, right? To gain nationality, not money, not social support, but esteem, right? Esteem through the battle against others, foreign or domestic, real or imagined. Who are those others? That's us, right? Yeah. All right, so Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind, Harriet A. Washington. Another book that came out this past week, Black in America, Bias in America by Hal Marcovit. Now, I am not familiar with Referencepoint Press, right? So I think it's interesting. I'm not familiar with the author, and I'm not familiar with the press that it's out of. So I would be very interested in this book. When I say interested, I'm not saying I'm going to run out and buy it. It's not on the top of my list, but I'm curious to see what perspective it is offering from Professor Marcovit of Referencepoint Press. All right. Another book that came out this past week, Embattled Freedom, Journeys Through the Civil War Slave Refugee Camps by Amy Murrell Taylor, UNC Press. I think there's about 3 books that just came out by University of North Carolina Press. So shout out to the editors at North Carolina Press for continuing to produce this type of scholarship. And as a matter of fact, I'm not sure Amy Murrell Taylor is a University of North Carolina professor, but I think it bears repeating. I'm watching the NBA right now, and I'm a sports fan. So I definitely want to give a shout out to the University of North Carolina and its African American Studies program for making the comeback, right, after the scandal with the athletic department and all that. And it's proven that your comeback is proven by these wonderful books that are on Black scholar or on the Black experience, for lack of a better word. Another UNC North Carolina Press book, let me see if I can find the other ones, Illusions of Emancipation, The Pursuit of Freedom and Equality in the Twilight of Slavery by Joseph P. Reidy, North Carolina Press. Right. Oh, and as a matter of fact, our signature book of this week is also North Carolina Press, Free the Land. But we're going to wait till the end to talk about that one. That's a doozy. That one is the one that's at the top of my reading list. All right. So getting through some of the others, Girl in Black and White, The Story of Mary Mildred Williams and the Abolition Movement by Jesse Morgan-Owens. This is out of W.W. Norton Press. I'm very interested in the abolition movement of the 19th century, not always in a positive way. I mean, I support the abolition movement. I'm very thankful for those who crossed racial lines to support Black freedom. However, I was disappointed to learn later in life, and disappointed to learn it, and disappointed that I was not taught it, that I had to find it out independently. And it caused me to look at abolition in a very different way. I did discover that a great deal, perhaps the majority of abolitionists, wanted to free the slaves because it was labor competition against poor whites. And that after freeing the slaves, the majority of abolitionists wanted Black folks to be removed from those jurisdictions. So freedom from slavery, but then get the hell out so that white people can have the jobs. So these abolition movements often were followed by the movement to send Black folks back to Liberia. There were others talking about moving to South America. I even have some slave petitions in North Carolina from citizens who wanted to raise taxes on slave owners so high that they couldn't maintain their businesses. These are called abolitionist taxes. But the proceeds from every proposal was dedicated to sending Black people out of the state, out of the county, or out of the country, right? So that there were free states, that there were lots of free states and abolitionists is one thing, and it should be applauded. However, the full picture, the whole story also shows that those good folks did not necessarily want the presence of Black people at all, slave or free. If you didn't like Black people, slave or free, you became an abolitionist, not necessarily a slave owner or an overseer that had to deal with Black folks all the time. All right. I'm not saying that abolitionists were worse than slave owners. Stop that. I'm saying we got to look at it from the full context. I know some folks out there twist and turn and torch some words. All right, bevy of books that came out this week. Reconstructing the Gospel, Finding Freedom from Slaveholder Religion by Jonathan Wilson-Hargrove. I am not a religious person, but I'm very much interested in religion and the history of religion, especially, again, Christianity, because I hear lots of people talk about Christianity being a white man's religion when I know that it derived from Egypt. Then I know from Joseph Ben Yakinen that it was spread throughout Africa before it got a foothold in Europe. And at the same time, I can also make the argument on the other side that its separation from Egypt, its attachment to the curse of Ham, is a designation or connotation of a northern peoples and their emergence. And therefore, the European co-optation of the Bible is maybe not a co-optation at all. So even if it started at its origins in Africa, is it in that manifestation as we learned it? Right? Now, having said that and problematized it, I have an issue of those who criticize Christianity as a white man's religion and then say Islam in favor of Islam as our true religion when Islamic forces, be they Arab or be they North African or West African, in their reform movements in both the 11th and 12th century and also the 18th and 9th century, put black folks in African religion to the sword and in slavery, and the justification was that you were not a Muslim or a follower of Islam. So even though Ethiopians helped Muhammad remove Persians and Romans from Arabia and establish the first caliphate in the first Muslim strongholds, right? We cannot deny that within 200 years, Al-Jahiz, one of Islam's greatest scholars, had to write a book called On the Glory of the Black Race to decry and discredit Syrian Muslims who have been enslaving Africans since the signing of the Bact in 641, with Egypt extracting slaves from Nubia and further south. I know that's a long diatribe. I'm absolutely sure this book is probably not on the vibe that I was on, but I just had to throw that out there. Reconstructing the Gospel, Finding Freedom from Slaveholder Religion by Jonathan Wilson-Hargrove, IVP Press. I'm not exactly certain what is that press. All right, another book that came out this week, The End of the Second Reconstruction by Richard Johnson. This is published by Poly. And I know what this book is about without even reading the blurb, right? The first Reconstruction is after the Civil War. So we have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and we had a flourishing for a good 25 to 30 years, only to be pulled back by Plessy versus Ferguson, by Woodrow Wilson, by Jim Crow's laws and slavery by another name. So the end of the Second Reconstruction is talking about right now. The Second Reconstruction began with the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. We had, again, another 20 to 25, 30-year run of advancement, and then the neoconservatives came over, again, talking about the Reagan era. The neoconservatives hatched plans to reinvigorate the racial wealth gap, to reinvigorate racially asymmetrical market failures that look neutral, right? They look natural, but they are in fact designed to perpetuate racism. So again, the fight against neoliberalism, I understand it. I think it's misdirected though. I think the fight is against neoconservatives. Now, having said that, maybe neoconservatives just ain't gonna give it up, and that we have to go after neoliberals as the ones who can be co-opted in either direction. But if that's the case, I think it requires different strategies. I'm going to put that to the side for right now because we're going to talk about these books, right? Right. All right. Another book that came out this week, Witnessing Whiteness. Again, this is about religion again. Witnessing Whiteness, Confronting White Supremacy in the American Church by Christopher Norris. Now, this one, it seems to be dealing with not the black church, but why do self-proclaimed Christians who say they promote tolerance and love and justice and all that, accept and even promote racism. So going back, if you're a follower of John Henry Clark, he will argue that the European has never followed Christianity and never will, right? That it is a Herrenvolk socialism. It is a Herrenvolk religion. It is a Herrenvolk spirituality, right? That well, I'm like that all of the lessons are not universal. They only belong to the group, right? You can want to be part of the group. You can even prove that you ought to be part of the group. That doesn't mean people have to let you in the group, right? And again, we can reference the Center of Group Dynamics, Stephen Garcia and his research team for lessons upon that issue. This was published out of Oxford University Press. And although I guess it is promoting and supporting white supremacy, to say that an English university, the premier English university, is the #1 arbiter of truth and quality, and yet we are in a system of white supremacy, and Oxford University Press is the #1, or at least one of the top echelon certifiers of scholarly quality. So we are going to engage in that right now. We are not, none of us are entirely removed from the system of white supremacy. So let's just acknowledge it when we do it. Fair enough? Fair enough. All right, so the last book, the doozy, the one that I have to order, the one that I have to have in my hands, the one that I have to have on my shelf, Free the Land, the Republic of New Africa, and the Pursuit of a Black Nation State. Edward Onachi, University of North Carolina Press. Shout out to UNC Press. Who do I know teaching at UNC Press? Erica Wilson, Professor Erica Wilson in the law school. If you don't mind, if you know where the press is at, if you can just walk on over there and give them a fist bump for a brother named Dre Smith, I would appreciate it. And I know Erica Wilson is watching Utah versus Denver if she's not teaching class right now. Oh, man, we got it in one conference arguing about Kobe or something like that, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. Shout out to Professor Wilson, one of the dopest. All right, so Free the Land, the Republic of New Africa, and the Pursuit of a Black Nation State by Edward Onachi. So this one, let's take a little blurb from the description, because I didn't know any of this, and I need to know more of this. And this book is perfect example of what this show is all about. This is a perfect example of what the things that I come across in academia that shouldn't be stuck up there. That there are things that all of us should be at least aware of, even if we don't have it on our bookshelves. So Free the Land, the Republic of New Africa, and the Pursuit of a Black Nation State. On March 31st, 1968, over 500 Black nationalists convened in Detroit to begin the process of securing independence from the United States. Let me say that again. I'm going to say it again. Got to say it again. On March 31st, 1968, over 500 Black nationalists convened in Detroit to begin the process of securing independence from the United States. Many concluded that the Black Americans' best remaining hope for liberation was creation of a sovereign nation state, the Republic of New Africa, RNA. Now, and that ill gets wilder. Where would be the Republic of New Africa? If you know the story, you know. I didn't know. All right, here we go. New African citizens traced boundaries that encompassed a large portion of the South, including South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, as part of their demand for reparations. Ooh-wee! Okay, I'm a supporter of NCOBRA. I am not a supporter of ADOS, regardless which organization you support, whether with regard to reparations. It is this is a phenomenal piece here, and lessons to be learned. I had no clue that part of the demand for reparations included land itself. Free the land in the Deep South, the land that we did in fact work. If you are a follower of John Locke or John Stuart Mill, as far as the rights to property being those who worked and toiled against nature to produce something out of the wilderness, that would be Black people in the antebellum South. And so that property ought to be ours if that philosophy was tried and true, right? So this demand for reparation, including large portions of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I know, I'm a fan of Ancova. Some of you may be a fan of ADOS and whatnot. Or is either one of them talking as large as these folks here? If we're talking about Robert Smith, if we're talking about what's the brother? Robert Johnson, black billionaires calling for reparations, calling for trillions of dollars in reparations. Well, what will you spend that money on? Maybe it should, that money, that those trillions of dollars should go towards claiming South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Let me ask you this, because an interesting thing happened this week. If black folks were to get this land, I'm assuming, and I could be assuming wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that the farmable, valuable land that is in these places would convert over to majority, if not exclusive, black ownership. This would be somewhat like Zimbabwe, no? And so the question becomes, would then reparations be due to the owners of those lands that was taken from them? We know that Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa basically just paid something like $3.5 billion to the white farmers whose land was taken under the Mugabe regime. A lot of controversy over that. Would that follow with this one? Would that be a demand? Anyway, all these things are things to be thought about. I mean, these are things that trigger my brain when I saw this book. That's what these things are supposed to do, to expand our horizons, expand our minds. So that's our book list for this week. Some fantastic, fantastic, fantastic books. Let's start with the public one, Hatemonger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the White Nationalist Agenda. I think that's a worthy book to grab. Reconsidering Reagan, Racism, Republicans, and the Road to Trump by Daniel S. Lux. I'm really just intrigued by that book. I'm really intrigued by what perspective it's coming from. A Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind by Harriet A. Washington. The author, Harriet A. Washington, is also the author of Medical Apartheid. You've seen that book. Big red book in black bookstores. Right out, usually featured very prominently. It's great that she has a new book out. Black in America, Bias in America by Hal Marcovit. Embattled Freedom, Journeys Through the Civil War Slave Refugee Camps. Girl in Black and White, The Story of Mary Mildred Williams and the Abolition Movements by Jesse Morgan-Owens. Illusions of Emancipation, The Pursuit of Freedom and Equality in the Twilight of Slavery, right? Talking about the Reconstructing the Gospel, Finding Freedom from Slaveholder Religion. I got to write that one up right with this other one, Witnessing Whiteness, Confronting White Supremacy in the American Church. Two very interesting books on race and religion. Shout out to my homie, Dr. Courtney Bryant at Manhattan College. I heard she's about to sign a book deal on religion and sexual identity. Courtney Bryant, Dr. Courtney Bryant, check for it. When she puts it out, I'm going to review it here. You know that. The End of Second Reconstruction by Richard Johnson, right? End of the Second Reconstruction. And to me, that's very poignant for today. And then lastly, the book that's really on the top of my list, the one that I have to go get, the one that's going to be on my bookshelf, Free the Land, The Republic of New Africa in the Pursuit of a Black Nation State by Edward Onachi, UNC Press. And the interesting thing, this is published, that 1968 meeting is probably right after Sheikh Anta Diop puts one of his last books out called Black Africa, The Case for a Federated State. The economic, I think it's called The Economic and Technological Basis for a Federated State. So this idea towards nationhood that was held in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s by not just Americans, but also Sheikh Anta Diop with Senegalese and others, was really, really, really is something that we really need to reach back on to understand how strident our ancestors were. When you see those shirts, I am not my ancestors, maybe we need to be. Maybe we need to be. All right. So We've gone over about a half hour. So again, check out these books. Save Black bookstores, support Black museums and art houses, support HBCUs and other Black schools, whether it be public or private or charter, right? We're going to better educate ourselves and our children. We're going to start and patronize Black businesses and institutions. So we're going to stop unduly criticizing each other and promoting that myth of Black inferiority. That's accumulating human, social, political, and financial capital. That is the revolution that will never be televised. See y'all next week on For Our People. I'm Dre Smith, Hotep.